In this video, I'm going to break down my remix of Area Codes by Ludacris, and I'm going to walk you through the entire arrangement using this little arrangement cheat sheet here that shows you exactly how top producers structure their tracks to create maximum impact on the dance floor. So let's go ahead and play the track really quick, or just a piece of it, so you can hear what it is. I've got holes in different area codes. Area codes. You could download the track along with the samples I used in the description. You'll also find a link to the Ableton template. And if you want to watch me build this track completely from scratch and learn the full system behind it, then check out the ZERMELO System down below. Now let's break it down. And can you believe it? We've got an HT2 formula, of course, and I did it deliberately. I wanted to make a track that is pretty much like just checking as many boxes as possible. Standard HT2. So we've got the intro here, and just here's a little map up top. So here we've got the intro, the bass drop where we introduce the bass line, break 1, which is where we introduce the main hook, break 1, HD1, which is hook drop 1, that's going to be right here, 32 bars. That's where we're going to put the hooks over the groove, the big hooks in the track. Main break and build right here, 32 bars. That is going to be where the vocal comes in, where the groove goes away a little bit, and then the big vocal in this track comes back. And we're going to build some tension for the return of the drop, which is going to be right here, hook drop 2, HD2. That's going to be right here, and then we just go right into outro. All right, and then that is the HT2 formula. Intro, 16 bars, bass drop, 16 bars, break 1, 16 bars, HD1, hook drop 1, 32, main break and build, 32, hook drop 2, 32, outro 32. It doesn't have to be those bar lengths at all. If you've watched these breakdowns a lot, then you'll know that tracks will have 24 drops, 24 bar main break and build, 16 bar main break and builds, 8 bar break ones. Like, there's all sorts of things. It's really just that kind of high level structure right here. But I wanted to make something that was pretty much boilerplate, but do it in what I hope is a creative way. So let's start playing the track from the beginning. The good thing about this time is I don't have to make a bunch of MIDI clips because the entire project is right here. Let's play the intro. What do we got? Of course, we just got some beats because intros and outros are for DJs, not producers. I'm trying to keep it simple for the DJ. And that's pretty much going to be it. The beats are a little tiny bit textural. So right here, maybe that's the sound itself of the drums could be a unique thing or a unique identifier. Just very disco-y, indie dance kind of live. But I'm just keeping it super simple through here. And then we kind of start working through the intro over towards the bass drop over here. I've got So only thing right there is just intro hook tease, just like that. So intro hook tease is just teasing the hook of the track right before that bass drop, and then you drop into the bass line. In the intro, there's no A-B. There's a tiny little motif, a little bit of a unique thing right here that's in green. And so if I kind of play this by itself, and then there's this other tiny little sound right here. Now, that stuff is just the bass line run through Tantra. And so that's a little tiny bit of a motif, a little bit of teasing the bass line, but it's You can't really derive the bass line from that at all. It's just more of like an intro texture. And then here we just have, again, the vocal hitting. And then the next thing we do is we get into the bass drop. And the bass drop is where we introduce the bass line and only the bass line. We want to teach people how to move, groove, and dance to the track before we start throwing the hooks on top. And I'm going to be doing that in this track for sure. The hook drops are where we're supposed to throw the hooks on top. In the beginning, you just want to keep it simple for the listener. Like, depending on who's listening, like even if you're doing a radio edit, you're probably not going to be playing the bass drop anyway. You might be playing maybe 8 bars of when the bass comes in, maybe 4 bars, maybe just go right into the drop. Even for the DJ mixing in here, like just keep it simple because it could be mixing out of the track, the previous track, which still could have hooks going on. So I just want to kind of get that bass line in there and only the bass line. And then when we start to get to the second 8 bars, as you know, the DJ's kind of mixing out of the other track, then you can start to move a little bit more towards hooks or previewing hooks and then also working towards the break 1. So let's see what I do here. So this little guy right here, that's technically what I call a punk. Maybe we'll talk about punks more, but punks is basically just like structured ear candy. So it's just little ear candy, but it's structured because a lot of times punks, which is short for punctuation points, you can think of almost like a grammar to an 8 bars, where you have something hit around the 4 bar mark, maybe something at the 8 bar mark, maybe something kind of at the 2 or at the 6. And so there's this kind of structure and a hierarchy. And the most important ones are going to be the 4 and the 8. And so you can see right away in the project, I've got something at the 4 and the 8. But really the reason why I put this even here in the intro is because later on, this becomes a very big part of the drop. So if I play that over here. All right. And if I just play the main, this guy right here, that's just the resonator on the vocal. That's really it. And basically this right here, I wanted to tease that before it came into the drop. But if I played the vocal resonator right there, that would be way too much for the intro. So I'm just playing that rhythm, right, with just the snare. And the snare is playing with it throughout the entire track, but just having the resonator vocal come in too early would be too much. So that's it. Just a little bit of a fill just to start teasing that moment. That's going to be accented heavily in the drops throughout the entire drops. All right. And so coming up to the next part. So just doing a little bit of a high pass, you can see here in the waveform. So just doing the exact same intro hook tease that I did here, just doing it again, just teasing it again, because you're going to feel that tension as we get closer and closer that that's got to pay off. And that's the whole point is I've got, and then I'm holding back on the line hose, right? That's what everyone's going to want to say, assuming they know the song. But anyway, and then again, I've got, and then the hose gets cut off, which is probably not the best thing to say. But then over here, then finally I deliver the full thing and pay off the I've got and then hose, which is the key line of the song. But in the bass drop here, what are we doing? We're dropping the bass line. A section, B section. Am I doing an A section, B section? Let's see. All right, so the thing that happens right here is it's not so much an A section, B section, but we do have like a little bit of a hat lift. Yeah, whoops, which I just was. This guy right here. This comes in. So before it was just not that. So here's before, right? Smaller hat, and then just a little bit of a hat lift. Not a big deal, but just picking up the energy just a little bit, all right? And so then what else happens here? So now you can see things start to kind of pick up. So you got that little effect sound down here, which is the bubbles down here, this guy. Love that sound. And that plays throughout the track. So this kind of little structure right here of the kind of snare, is it this guy right here? The snare triggers that guy. And then triggers the bubbles. All right, so if I play it in context again. And then that little vocal right there just to pick up on the vocals. Like there's going to be more vocals. And it's almost like someone's getting ready. You know what I mean? But it's just more vocals. And so you can hear, though, that as we get, quote, in the B section with the hat lift and then some of these extra little things, we're just moving towards a next section. It's subtle, but we're definitely moving in that direction. And so finally, that little intro gets paid off. So here the listener gets I've got and then denied, I've got and then denied. And then finally, if they know the song, then they get the vocal that they've been kind of waiting for. And so going back over here, the bass drop, we got the bass line, A section, B section, a little bit. Definitely A section groove. B section does have a lift. And that's going to be the hi-hat, also that kind of little bubble sound, the little vocal chop, and there you go. B transition, are we foreshadowing what's to come in break one? Not really, but we are doing a hook tease, which is going to be the I've got. And then that just kind of like does not get paid off until we finally enter into the bass drop into break one. When we go into the bass drop, do we have drums lift with the bass coming in? So let's see. If we come over here and I play this. Yeah, so a little bit like this guy right here. This is just a little texture loop that I added, a little top texture. Okay. And so here, that's not there. And then that comes in. It's such a minor thing, but it does lift a little bit. And then we get that hat lift 8 bars later. So here, just listen to that lift a little bit. Not a big deal again, but it is there. I got all right, so just a little tiny bit of a lift. Punk's Edis ear candy. Yep, we talked about that. Entry to this? I don't think so. There's no entry to that. Okay, cool. All right, and so now we're getting out of the bass drop and we're going into break one. Okay, what are we trying to do in break one? Well, the break one is where we take the groove away and introduce the hooks. All right, again, I'm trying to just say super boilerplate in this track to show this stuff. But break one, again, is where we take away the groove. So here, when we go into the break, how are we going to take the groove away? And in my case, I'm just doing a high pass on the drums and bass. So if I get the automation out, you could see, for example, that we've just got a high pass on here. I got holes in different area code. All right, and so that is taking the groove away a little bit, giving them a break. So here, when the full low end is blasting, then people are kind of full on dancing, because that's what the low end does. It compels us to dance and to move. But when that goes away, we're more shuffling. We're not dancing as much. But that gives us the perfect opportunity to introduce the main thing. All right. And so right here, we're giving them a break, yes. And in my case, we're just doing a simple high pass. What we want to do is we want to keep the groove alive. And that just means don't freaking cliff dive it. Don't completely take the groove away because it would kill the momentum. And so obviously I'm just letting the drums continue, but they just don't have the low end. All right. And so I'm keeping the groove alive. And then we want to introduce the main thing. And that is me now just bringing in the Nate Dogg vocal. I got holes in different area code. Area code. Holes in different area code. Area code. I got. And that's it. All right. That's the whole point of that, is to kind of give a break from dancing a little bit, keep the rhythm going. so that, you know, by the time the DJ mixes in here, this is where they're mixed in for the most part. Probably. It obviously depends on who's DJing, but like for the most part, DJ is going to be fully in the track right here. So I want to keep that momentum going. So keeping the drums going, but then the focus of the track right there is going to be the vocal. All right, so we're hitting them with the main thing right there. And then once this is kind of established, once that main hook is kind of established, then we can start building tension again to work back into the drop. All right, but let me go back to this. I don't think I finished this. The break one is where we take the groove away and we introduce the hooks. And that's exactly what's going on. Just high passing the groove, introducing the main hook. The idea here for break one is similar to what we're doing in bass drop, but completely flipped. If we're looking at arrangement as the story of the hooks and the groove, then in the bass drop, we're introducing the groove character and we're holding back on the hooks. Not completely, right? There's still a little tiny bit of teasing hooks in there, but we're mostly, the primary thing right there, the dominant thing is the groove. And then here in break one, we flip that. So we hold back on the groove through high passing in this case, and we present the main hooks. We present the hook character. All right, so bass drop is basically the groove character, and then break one is basically the hooks character. And so then over here, once we've given them a break, kept the groove alive, introduced the main thing, then we can start building tension into that next drop. So let's see how that happens. Area code, area code. I got holes in different area code, area code. In different area code, area code. I got. All right, cool. So how does that happen? Well, building tension. There's a menu of things we could use to build tension. And that's rep, roll, rise, grow. Rep, roll, rise, grow. Rep is a hook repetition. Roll is snare roll, kick roll, crash roll, whatever roll. Rise is like something that goes up. White noise up, tonal riser up, cut off on a bass going up, cut off on a synth going up, vocal pitching up, something that just goes up. Anything that moves up in the frequency spectrum just signals that the tension is growing, or increasing, I should say. Because grow right here is growing the space. It's just creating this expanded feeling. You know, I just thought of this analogy right now is imagine if you're just blowing into a balloon. You just keep blowing into it, keep blowing into it. Like if you're watching someone do that, you feel the tension because you know that thing is going to pop. And that's kind of what reverb and delay here when you're growing the space is doing. It's just expanding that space because you know it's all going to collapse down into the drop. And so this is kind of the elements we can use to build tension, the basic ones. So here we have, in the vocal, I don't do a hook repetition. I'm just playing the chorus again. But I do have a snare roll. So that's going to be this guy right here. And then that grows and opens up over time. So that's a roll, rise, and grow all in one. All right. And so that is that. And then what else am I doing? So we definitely have some risers down here. So we've got like this guy right here. Got a tonal riser. And then growing the space is definitely on the vocal here. We're going to have some kind of endless smile or reverb or something. So if I look at the end, here we have endless smile. And so if I look at the automation on there, there is endless smile doing its thing. So altogether, we've got roll, rise, and grow. And that's how I'm building tension here. Absolutely. So let's now come back and listen to that one more time. All right, awesome. Okay, so that is break one. And then here, once we build that tension, the question is, how do we then transition into the first drop? And so there's really kind of two ways, which would be kind of like a PIPO. So PIPO stands for pattern interrupt pay off, PIPO, pattern interrupt pay off, or a momentum transition. Momentum transition is easy. It's just like you keep building, and then you just go into the drop. It's almost like there's a crack in the dam, and there's all this pressure on the dam, on the crack in the dam, and then it just bursts. But a pipo is you're building, and then you stop the building abruptly. Everyone pays attention. You deliver a payoff, and then you explode into the drop. And this is by far the most common type of transition into a drop. But let me show you how I'm doing that too, because I'm definitely doing a pipo. Again, trying to be as boilerplate as possible, but also trying to be creative at the same time. So let's see how this is working. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm actually smoothing the transition out. I don't have an abrupt kind of moment. So even on the snare roll, you can see that I am bringing down kind of the intensity of things a little bit as we approach the payoff moment right here. And I think even in the effects, if we look at the automation here, then we can see like some things kind of starting to come down a little bit. And then we just ease into the payoff moment, which is area codes, and then I've got hose. But you can see the groove right here, it just stops right there just for area codes. And so it is a pipo, but it's not like super abrupt, right? With the pattern interrupt, what you're doing is you have this building pattern, build, and that's a pattern. And it just tricks our brain into just thinking like it's just going to go on forever. Of course, we know it's not, but it just feels like it. And then when that abruptly stops, it captures our attention, right? It hijacks the brain. And then everyone pays attention because now, like, once your brain is just like, whoa, what just happened? You're paying attention, you play the payoff vocal, and then you explode into the drop, and it creates a lot of excitement. But here, I'm kind of smoothing that out. So I'm bringing things down and just easing into that payoff moment rather than abruptly stopping everything. So just once again here, let me play the audio. But I do stop everything when I say I've got, because I want to pull everyone's attention in on that. So I've got, and then hose, going back to the theme before where you're kind of denying expectations. I've got. So I'm just bringing that back, but I'm doing a little bit of a side piece thing where you kind of just delay out a piece of the hose. And that's really easy. Like I just cut the vocal right here, and then also I just have this little channel right here, which is just Ableton delay. Nothing crazy right there. Awesome. Okay, so that's now getting into the drop. So we're done with the break. Atmosphere, not too much atmosphere. A lot of the atmosphere is just coming from the vocals. This break is mostly just high pass kick and high pass drums and bass, and then the vocal. That's really it, keeping it super simple and then just building tension. I don't think there's any entry in going in here. It's just going to be the vocal. I do have like a delay on hose when it comes in just to make that a little bit more dramatic. So, and that just kind of delays out. It just helps, keep the transition a little bit smoother, I guess. I've got hose. So I wouldn't say that's an entry though. But now we're going into hook drop one. Hook drop one, this is where the real story begins, right? This is the drug of the track, the thing that you hopefully create something cool that people really connect with. And then you take it away in the main break and build, and then you build tension to promise the return of the cool thing that you introduced over here. Okay, but this is where we've introduced the groove character in the bass drop. We've introduced the hook character, at least what the hook of the track is, which is going to be, the Nate Dogg vocal. And then in hook drop one, we kind of bring the hooks and grooves together, at least hooks and groove. In my case, what I'm doing is I'm just doing kind of pieces of the hook and different other little kinds of hook that come from the main hook. So you'll see what I mean. But I'm not giving Nate Dogg's vocal in a big way over this drop at all. And I have like a sound design hook that comes in the B section, which we'll look at. And then I do a little bit of vocal chop stuff, but keeping the drop mostly just kind of groove and little bits of the hooks from the previous drop. So the breaks in this track are lots of vocal. Over here in the main break, lots of vocal. And the drops are going to be groove and just kind of like pieces of hooks and vocal. All right. So that said, let's see what else we got to do. Well, number one, hooks over the groove. So we'll look at what hooks come in over here and kind of check off these boxes. So here we go. All right, cool. So just to kind of give you looking what we're moving into. So this first 8 bars, what's going on here? This is mostly just supposed to be exciting, not hitting people with a lot of hooks because, again, 32 or 16 bars of just big vocal hooks. So now I'm kind of giving people a break and just hitting them with the groove. But we are opening up the bass right away. So if I just play the groove here, I'll even mute the drums just so it's mostly kick and bass. All right, and that's just going to be a very simple automation on the bass right there. And I'm definitely going to be automating the cutoff right here. And then here you can see I'm automating the sustain on the filter envelope. But since this is not sound design and just arrangement, we're going to try to stay focused on just the arrangement. But that is an arrangement move. It's an exciting move to kind of kickstart the drop right there, which is very common right now. So we got that open bass. That plays for a little bit. And then let's see what the next thing is, because this is all kind of about a sequence of sound every 2 bars is what I'm kind of doing here. So all right, so that open bass and that stutter on the oh brings us over to Ludacris shouting biatch with the delay. All right, and then that brings us to that punk at the 4-bar mark, what I call the P4. And this is a big moment right here. So right here. Is it 'cause they? And so that was teased back over here. So you can imagine if I had that resonator vocal back there earlier, it would have been way too much. So, and then after that, there's just some like exciting kind of things that happen. So for example, I have this little sound that kind of accents. That is just basically tantra on the bass once again. And so if here's kind of like the kick bass and just that kind of P4. That's it. Just a little scratch stuff. And that's 2 bars. And then finally, for the last 2 bars, we're going to bring in that vocal, which is right here. And that plays with a crash right here. So watch. So the crash plays on the beat, the vocal plays on the offbeat. That is basically the sequence that I wanted to create right here. So for the first 2 bars, it's just open bass and the delay from the entry vocal. Next 2 bars is going to be the biatch and delay. And then we have the P4 moment that just jumps out. And then for the next 2 bars, we've got some momentum from that P4, also that little DJ scratch thing. And then for the last 2 bars here in the first 8, we've got the vocal. And then we have the kind of crash kind of playing together as an edit to bring us into the next 8 bars here. And so here we go. So what happens here in terms of the arrangement? So this is going to be now the second 8 bars. And in the second 8 bars, this is basically going to be a simple A section, B section. And the A section is going to be mostly groove. And then the B section here is we're going to go into this synth down here. So just to get things a little bit more exciting, what I did is I added just a couple rides here. So we have this kind of mid ride. Got this bright ride. And then what I did is down here in this granulator group, I took the main vocal and I just found a cool spot in here. And that basically became a little kind of lead with the vocal. So kind of like a vocal chop, little lead, a little bit of a hook lift. Again, and kind of inspired by the vocal. And then there's also this one over here. just played in a slightly different spot. And what I did is I just bounced those two. So they're just audio down here. So that is really all that I added on top. So just those rides, and it does seem like there is this little guy right here. So what is this? This is a transition, something that helps kind of evolve or transition into the B section right here. Basically, what's going on here is here we had that first 8 bars. We got that kind of exciting sequence of sounds. Then we get here into the next 8 bars. We just got a lift in the drums with the rides. We've got a lift in the hooks with the vocal. And we then have and we just have this kind of transition, the one that I just played. And then finally, I have a lead rhythm tease right here. This is the lead that's about to come in right here. But this just kind of plays a little bit of a little bit of a percussion sound. Totally a subliminal thing. It could be not even there and I'd probably be totally fine. But all these things, what they're there to do is, one, just kind of lift the energy over and above the first 8 bars here and start to transition into the B section right here. So all of that together, here we go. And then, of course, you heard the P4, like this guy. Is it because and then after that, we've got some risers. Again, just pulling people into the B section here. One of the most important kind of like moments in a track is any moment of change is critical in a track, and just kind of accenting that or highlighting it in some way or preparing the moment of change. The obvious moments of change are when you go from a break to a drop. That is just a category shift. You're going into a completely different section. And that's why these moves from break 1 into the first drop and then the main break and build into the last drop are just massive moments. They're just huge moments of contrast. But a step down from going from section to section is the moment when you switch from an A section to a B section, or even more specifically, when you switch from one hook to another hook. You want that handoff to be smooth. You want to prepare the listener for that handoff. That's what I'm kind of doing towards the end here, is this little kind of P4 with the with the resonator starts to trigger some of these effects that rise up. And then the edit right here is kind of started with the this I've got just teasing. I've got the call that I teased earlier, and then hose is what just releases everything. Hose is what releases everything into the B section. So if I play from the 4 right here, you can hear all that transition work starting to happen, and then hopefully a smooth landing into the B section with the new synth. And one other thing that's kind of previewing the synth is the reverse synth right here. Now, this kind of rhythm tease has kind of been playing throughout, and this kind of reverse lead has been used a couple times. And so hopefully by the time that you hear this lead, it will kind of be a little bit familiar or not feel totally out of place. That's the idea. And so if we play from right here again, let's hear how all that transitions. So now we are in the B section, and we can look to see what's in the B section, but let's hop back over to the cheat sheet over here. In the B section, what do we need? Well, not just the B section, but a hook drop 1. Are we getting hooks over groove? Yes. And again, in the bass drop, this is not something that you want to just load hooks on top of. But here you can clearly see we're getting hooks on the groove. We obviously have that entry. Even those little hooks right there, a little bit too much for a bass drop, because again, you're just going to be getting in the way of the other track that's kind of playing, if it is playing. But then, of course, right here, Those are just kind of full on hooks. And then here in the B section, it just kind of ramps up to that moment where we're really lifting the energy of the track. And so coming over here, are we getting hooks over groove in the drop? Absolutely. Hook drop one, the HD1 equation. This is basically saying, and I need to fix this because this is written not chronologically. There we go. So the groove from the bass drop plus the hooks from bass 1 equals HD1, right? So another way of saying this is groove plus hooks equals hooks over groove. That's another way of saying that. And in this case, this is not 100% followed. So for example, here we have this big hook of the vocal playing in the breaks, but it does not play over the drop. Now there are little pieces of it that get played in the drop, like right here. And there's pieces of it from this granulator group right here that I'm using from the original vocal to create a new hook. But that full-on hook right there, even in like a kind of choppy kind of form, isn't quite playing through here. And that's the thing. You'll see other tracks do the same thing, where this is not a list of rigid rules, right? This is a list, this is like flexible frameworks. You can kind of decide what you want to do. This one, kind of hard to, especially if you're doing like tech house and not just minimal, this one's hard to violate, all right? But even still, the hooks that were introduced in break 1 are still featured in here a little bit, like with the ludicrous vocals, that transition right here, this vocal right here, which is the punk, the P4 that's playing right here, this guy is actually going to be a tease of a vocal that comes down the line. So that is just, again, the resonator on this vocal right here, which is going to be the main break and build vocal, which obviously we're going to get to. But if I play from right here, you'll see. Is it 'cause they like my gangsta wall, gangsta wall? And in the context of the track right here. Is it 'cause they like my gangsta wall, gangsta wall? Is it 'cause they like my gangsta talk? So that rhythm right there, the is it 'cause they, number one, I love that rhythm, but number two, I wanted to tease that. So again, when we just kind of get into this section, when there hasn't been vocal for a while, it just already feels familiar. This little P4 is coming from still a hook in the main track. And so while I'm not using the full-on hooks from that were introduced in the break, I am using pieces of them. So there is that coherence between the breaks and the drops. Now, what I wanted to get into here was the A section, B section, because that's what we're getting into. And so we definitely have an A section, B section, because it's going to be the kind of groove plus the granulator vocal lift right here, and then we're getting into the sound design lift right there. And so this is basically going to be it right here. So it's going to be the groove plus the sound design hook. So we're absolutely getting an A section, B section. Now, when we switch from an A section to a B section, are we getting the edit? So let's see. We may have covered this, but let's see. We absolutely are, but let me play a little bit further back, because when we're switching from A to B, this is going to be a huge moment of change. Just listen. And then if I play halfway through the next 8 bars, completely different in a way. It's just, and so we need to prepare the listener for change. And so that A-B edit, the edit between the A section and the B section, I want that to be dramatic. I want that to set up this incoming storm of lifts in the drums and lifts in the hooks. So if we play, what happened? All right, so hopefully that feels like it just rolls right in there, like we played before, but what's happening? So here we're doing, I'm just moving the kick onto a high pass channel right here, just to keep it clean. You don't always have to do that. You could just, turn a high pass on and off. Sometimes just to keep it super clean, I like to put the kick on its own dedicated high pass channel. And then let's see what's going on with the bass. So is there anything going on with the bass? Let's check out the automation. But you can see even right here, so I am still, this is kind of funny, a little bit redundant. redundant, but I do have a high pass on the entire groove channel, which includes the kick and the bass. And so the bass is getting hit by this high pass right there. So I've got a high pass on the kick and the bass right there. The kick goes away, so I'm really what I would call staging the edit, where here's full-on kick and bass, here's high pass kick and bass, and then here we're removing the kick. So that is staging down through the edit, the energy through the edit, so that it just explodes over here. And then, of course, we have a little bit more aggressive automation right there. You can see that that's coming on the bass a little bit more. But the big transition element here is just this vocal that's kind of coming up in volume. And so it's just I've got that repetition. When we go back to building tension, if we go back to the break right here, you know, even within an edit, you can almost think of these as very, very mini builds, but the tension building elements still apply: rep, roll, rise, grow. And so in this case, I'm using rep, hook repetition, the vocal repetition, to build a little bit of tension into the next section. So if we play that. And then that hose, boom, that is the trigger that kickstarts the B section. But another thing that I want to show you is that I bounced and reversed the synth that's coming in. And so this is also helping that transition. It out. And that is kind of basically like a rise. It's just basically a reverse. Okay, so we have the AB edit there. We just went through that. And then CLT stories. CLT stories just still stand for chill lift transition. And so what that simply means is in an A section, right? This is 16 bars. So here we have what I would call the chill section, where you can also think of it as the normal, the new normal. Okay. Once someone's coming out of the out of the break, and then we get into here, this is the moment that they're going to live in for a little bit, right? This is the normal. We're just chilling now. We're just enjoying the drop. We're dancing. We're having a good time. But after 8 bars, the listener's like, well, now what? Now what are you going to do? And this is where you would lift. And so CLT stories live within A section, B section. And so this would be the chill. This would be the lift. And then the T would be a transition, anything that helps you transition into the next section. And so that's kind of like in an A section, B section, you could think of what is a CLT story. And so in this case, it would be chill, and then we get a lift right here with the rides, and then the granulator synth, and then we start to transition through the edits. But there's not really any major transition element that kind of plays throughout this 8 bars. But we do have this kind of reverse synth that we just played and heard. And but the key thing here is the lift. This is a massive lifting moment right here when we go from the first 8 bars to the second 8 bars. So we absolutely have an A section lift. So you can see right there, chill to lift. And then we'll look at the B section. And so let's get into the B section and see what we got going in here. Big things happening there. What's happening there? What we want to do here is we're elevating, okay? Because this new synth comes in, we're passing off to this hook, and so here is the hook. This is just a Sam Smyers preset, by the way. It's just the Fisher one. I definitely did a lot to this, but that is the basic preset down there. It just cut through. That's why I really like that. I think that's even the first one in one of his packs. It's just like, it cut right through the mix, because this was crazy. But this is the B section hook. And then, but the same punks are still continuing. So if we look right here. So we have the Is It 'Cause They? I haven't been kind of drawing your attention to this, but every single time that little Is It 'Cause They, that little P4 plays, it triggers the bubbles that we looked at way earlier. So these guys, and then here again, and then here again. And so you can hear it a little bit more here now. Like if I play this, you'll hear Is It 'Cause They, and then you'll hear the little bubbles on top. And then also just continuing that ha that I even introduced way back here. I'm just trying to reuse as much of these vocals to keep people anchored to where they are. It's almost like signpost on a freeway so people know that they're not lost. You know, they're not picking up on this stuff consciously, but they can feel it. And so they know that when they start to hear this ha, then we're going to get pulled into an edit that's going to take us into another little section. And you can see, once again, I'm reusing the edits here that I did back here. So for example, in the first 8 bars, I have the vocal edit that's going that plays with the crash right here. And I'm literally doing the exact same thing right here. So I'm trying to keep as much symmetry as possible because there's a lot going on in this track with the hooks and the changes. So trying to keep an underlying structure similar is just going to, again, make everything feel cohesive, even though there's a lot going on. And so once again, this guy's playing. And just to show you that same thing in the 2 different contexts, here it is in the first one. Let me try to get the right, there we go. And then once again right here. So same thing. And so that's pretty much it. The only thing that's going on in this 8 bars is that hook lift. And then obviously we're keeping the punks and the edits, which are, for me, the same thing. So this would be like the P4, this would be like the P8. But another thing that we're doing is we're lifting in the hooks, we're elevating in the hooks, but we're also elevating in the drums as well. So I have this kind of noisu ride. That comes in just to give some nice super air to the mix. I don't even know if we'll be able to hear it. Let's hear it. Yeah, that adds a lot. If you heard me take it away right there, that just, that really adds a lot. Okay, and then one other big move I'm making here in the drums. Going to the tops group, I'm adding a 16th note right here. This guy. Just a closed hat. That's it. But that adds so much energy. And one little tiny thing that I want to show you that I'm doing on here is I have the random pan right here at 50%. So if I play this, you'll hear this thing just bouncing a little bit left and right. Again, just kind of creating chaos, which is what I want that section to feel like. I want it to feel like, holy shit, what just happened? If we play this again, you're going to hear the synth lift, you're going to hear the air ride lift, you're going to hear the, what's it called? The 16th lift. And then, of course, we're going to get the P4 here, and we're going to get the P8. And then that's going to take us into the last 8 bars. But now that we're in the B section, I'm going to play that. But now we're in the B section, we have a new CLT story. So this is now going to be the new normal. And that's what I mean by CLT stories apply within A section, B section. So now that we're in a B section, there is a new CLT. This is the new normal, the new chill. And then we're going to expect to get a new lift, or we're at least going to expect to get a lift and potentially even a transition into the main break and build. But let me play this and pay attention to the lifts that come in, and then pay attention to what happens over here. Here we go. All right, and so you can hear we're getting a similar lift to what we got before. All right, and so I call this a structural lift. So what I mean by that is here in the A section right here, we have this lift right here, which is going to be the granulator synth down here. That comes in. Also, same with the drums. There's a corresponding drum lift to the granulator lift right here. So it's going to be this mid-range ride. And so in the second 8 bars of both the A section and the B section, we're getting a similar lift. Just like I'm recycling the edits between the first and second bars of both the A section, B section, I am then also taking the lift structure from the A section and I'm moving it over to the B section, even though there's a completely different primary hook on top. Again, trying to keep the symmetry so that it's just not too chaotic. And so we have this mid-range ride lift right here. And then we have the granulator group down here. And that is basically serving as the hook also here in the, as the lift also in the B section. So check it out. You'll hear both of those come in. And so you could hear, I'm just using the same lift elements. The only thing that's different is like the hooks on top. And that's going to be that big synth. And just in case you're wondering, all I'm doing at the end there is I'm just automating up one of the macros. And this is something that Sam Smyers already had macroed, but it's this filter LFO. And I think it's going to be this guy right here. And so if I play this, you'll just see that this is helping serve to create a little bit of tension. This is a transition thing, but you'll see that this comes up. Look at this knob right here, and that's creating this kind of weird filter effect on an already heavily kind of weird filtered sound. So it's creating a really cool effect in my opinion. You can even see the filter moving around there a lot. And so that's all that's creating. It's just a little bit of chaos, but that was already pre-done by Mr. Sam Smyers there. Yeah, that's the drop. So we got A section, B section, and we have, if we go back to the cheat sheet, we have the B section lift, and you can feel that transition into the next section, which is going to be the main break and build. And so we definitely have CLT stories in the drop. We also have Punk's edits, ear candy. We looked at all that. Entry, we have that. That's that open bass. Technically, an entry is going to be a Punk. It's just a P1. But these are like tactics. Punk's edits, ear candy, that's all like micro production. But entries or false starts or strips, which we'll look maybe a little bit of a false start in Hook Drop 2. Definitely an entry in Hook Drop 2. A little bit of a false start-ish. But these are just kind of tactical things. But full development, i.e. when the hook drop comes in, do we get the full groove and everything? And I don't think I actually add any major drums. But what I definitely do, you could see, yeah, there's nothing really that comes in drum-wise. But I definitely have the bass fully open. In the beginning, I even have like this dedicated bass drop where I'm just keeping the filter down. And then when I get into the main sections of the track here, I just had a different bass. It's the same underlying bass. It's just a little bit more open. It's a little bit more aggressive. This bass right here is just a little bit more closed. And so I just happen to separate that in the channels. Not a big deal, but that is giving me a full development in the groove when I get into Hook Drop 1 because I'm giving the full presentation of the bass, whereas before in the bass drop, I was holding back a little bit on the bass. And so there we go. We got Hook Drop 1, checking off most of the boxes. I'm just not fully doing the HG1 equation where I'm taking the hooks from the first break and bringing them over the drop. But there is undoubtedly hooks over groove, clean A section, B section, clean AB edit, dramatic AB edit, CLT stories with structural lifts, meaning again the second 8 bars are the same in the A section, B section in terms of lifting. Definitely getting some Punk's edits, ear candy, all that stuff. The full development entry. So again, I wanted to make this song and just try to stick as close as I could to the HG2 formula, but still try to do it in a unique and creative way, which is what most of the time when we're breaking down tracks in here, the top tracks are usually using 90% of the time the HG2 formula, but doing things in a unique and creative way because this is a very high level thing, a lift. It's nothing. You could do that however you want. That's where the creativity comes in. But the structure is what allows you to kind of engineer the experience in a way that creates tension and then release and create those moments of euphoria or chills on the back. It's how you do it. And so let's move on into the main break and build. How are we now transitioning into the main break and build? That is the first question. But before we look at the actual execution, let's look at what we need to do in the main break and build. In the main break and build, we take away what they want. All right, that's the hooks over groove in some way. The hooks over groove right here, drop 1, this is the drug that we hopefully got them kind of addicted to in a good way. This is the thing that they want, that they like. They've been trained now to listen to this, and now we take that away. It's not being played anymore. So we take it away and we build tension, but we ease into it. We slowly build that tension, promising the return of the thing that they want, which is going to be here in hook drop 2. And so in the main break and build, the key thing is obviously we have to transition, but then what we're doing is we're breaking down and then we're building up. And so the fundamental idea in the main break and build is going to be the V taper, the down energy, and then the up energy. And then there's going to be some kind of transition moment into hook drop 1, and then obviously the explosion into hook drop 2. I'm sorry. Hook drop 2 is what I meant to say. And but you can see, like, almost you can think of the joints of a track. So here is where a moment of change happens. The direction of energy changes. And so we gotta, that's gonna be an important transition. Then it starts to step down. But then when we go from here to here, at the base of the V taper, right, I call that the turning point. That's a moment of change. We're going from down energy to up energy. So what are we gonna do there? How are we gonna signal? How are we gonna accent that change in direction? And then when we get into here, we're changing, again, this is a sectional change. We're going from the main break and build into the drop. This is the biggest, most dramatic change in the entire track. So how are we building that energy up to the maximum? Then how are we creating that payoff moment? And then how are we creating an absolutely explosive moment? And that's what the HT2 formula is all about. And that's the namesake of it, is yes, there is the HT2, but it's also a reminder that it is all about hook drop 2. It's all about how we move into hook drop 2. All of this is set up ultimately for this moment. And we can even be more specific about it. These 15 seconds, 4 bars before hook drop 2 and then 4 bars into hook drop 2 is really everything. It is the absolute peak of the experience of the track, because all this stuff that happened before is coming together in this moment where we've created that maximum anticipation in the listener's mind to explode into the drop once again to get what they want. And then when we explode into the drop and we get it, then that is the peak experience. And so this moment just before it, maximum anticipation, and then maximum release. So you can also think of maximum tension, maximum release right there throughout the entire track in those 15 seconds. 4 bars before, 4 bars after. But that is what all of this is meant to set up. And then after that, it's just kind of momentum. And it's just kind of giving them back the thing that they're familiar with. But this is really where almost all the work kind of pays off, both for a producer and for the listener when they're, for the producer producing the track and for the listener listening to the track. And so, yeah, pressure's on for the main break and build to work up to that moment. So how do we do it? Well, what is that transition, that first joint or transition when we're switching direction? What are we going to do here? All right, so different ways to transition. We've got the high pass. You could just throw on a high pass transition, very easy. That's typically what happens when you go into break 1. Just right here, just high pass. Keep the groove alive. Give them a break, but keep the groove alive. Another thing is strip. So high pass, you take away the low end. Strip is you take away the top end. And I do a little bit of an interesting thing. I have a strip in here, but you'll see how I did it. And then cliff dive is where you completely take the groove away. So the transition in the main break and build is almost entirely defined by what you do with the groove. And a lot of the down energy, up energy through the V taper in the main break and build right here is, again, almost entirely defined by what you're doing in the groove. So the drums and the bass. The hook is kind of open. You could kind of do whatever you want. You want to tell kind of a narrative, make it almost logical, but the way you define the energy through the main break and build is almost primarily done through the groove. And so how did we transition? Let's check it out. And so it's either a high pass, strip. So high pass, removing the low end, strip, removing the top end, so just keeping the kick and the bass, full on though. And then cliff dive is just completely removing the groove. So what do we do here? We definitely have the down energy, but what is that transition? It is the high pass. We're doing the high pass in this one. We are not doing a strip of the cliff dive, but again, we're going to get in the strip in a second. So now we're starting the V taper. Now we got the down energy, and this is why before I was explaining I love effects, because effects can help you explicitly communicate what the listener should be feeling, and this is why this is one of my favorite effects. Just this is just a very simple LFO downshifter that I made. I made it because there was this downshifter that I really liked, but I just recreated it so I can kind of customize it per track. But that is just communicating to the listener, down, energy, go down. You know what I mean? And like, you really want to keep it that simple. But then there's these impacts and all that stuff, lots of down energy kind of communication. But the first step down from the drop into the here is going to be just the high pass, removing the low end. So if we look at the automation, this is very simply just going to be your standard kind of high pass automation. I'm just using EQ8. So if I click over here, you see, hey, EQ8's on, and there it is. And so we're high passing, we're communicating down with the LFO riser down. And then what else? What do we do? What do we do here in the first 8 bars? Well, this is just kind of like a transition section. You can almost think of it as like a bridge in the full down energy. We're going to be stepping down the energy in stages, and we're kind of working towards the second 8 bars. That's kind of how I see this, is here we're getting out of the drop, and I want to work down to the second 8 bars, which I call the basement. And again, basement is in terms of the groove because the lowest state of energy in the track. And so how do I get there? Well, the first way is I'm just high passing. Second is I'm using those effects to kind of communicate down to the listener. But then how do I just keep it interesting? So the only thing is I need to get some kind of hook or something in there to occupy the listener's attention. So what I did is I took the bass line from the original track, but I just played it as a flute. I just thought it was so sick, like flutes and hip hop tracks I think are so cool. And so this is just a preset. Who is this one? This is Bound to Divide, YouTube. I'm using, obviously a producer too, but he makes a lot of YouTube content as well. But this is the sound. Yeah, so I just freaking love that, and that noise, that texture on that thing is super cool as well. I didn't even dive into how they made it. I just loved it and just used it. Yeah, one thing is like if you're listening to this and you hear that texture, you might be like, ooh, I can't do that. I can't have that texture on there, or like I got to get rid of that. Maybe it sounds like it's distorting or something, but I love that texture. I think it sounds so cool. I liked it so much that I added a lot more textures to this section. So for example, I just added in this vinyl crackle down here. And then there's this other thing that I bounced in the track. If I play this right here, you can even see this audio hijack because I just recorded it. But that is the rotary texture that I have on one of these sounds, which is I think going to be on the lead. I have this kind of like Leslie speaker on this guy. And if I solo this, for example, you can hear the rotary texture right now, but it's going to be this guy, I believe, just that thing spinning. So I just recorded it. I didn't even know what it was at the time until I figured out what it was, but I just recorded that texture and I made it a lot louder during this section. I just mixed it in. So if I play that plus this vinyl texture and then we get the loop texture in here, or the flute texture in here, it just sounds cool to me. All right. And so again, that's just me doing weird things. I'm still doing I'm still checking off what I need to in terms of the V taper and stuff, but I'm just being creative. I'm trying to be weird. And so that's it for the first 8 bars. And so this is kind of that bridge section as we get to the break or the basement, that lowest energy point of the track. But check it out. So this is what I want you to see when we're get into the strip. Going into the main break and build through the flute section, and then listen to the transition, what I do into the break section here, the basement. Check it out.
wall? Is it cause they like my gangster talk? Gangster talk. Ooh. Is it cause they like my handsome face? Handsome face.
So when we get here, what am I trying to do? Well, this is like, to me, the break. This is almost like we're getting back over to this section where you hit them with the main thing. There's so much momentum coming out of this drop that we need a little bit of second to kind of slow things down before we get into a break. So that's why we have this kind of extra time. A lot of times, like some tracks like, Appetite, for example. Also, How Deep Are Your Dreams by Clooney, Freaks by Joshua. They go right into the lowest energy point here. But in this track, I felt there was so much energy coming out of this drop. Let's slow things down before we get down to that kind of basement level. And so here, what's going on? I'm just bringing the lows back in. And then I'm heavily filtering down the top end. And so if I play just the groove here, you'll hear I have the full low end, but I just have a low pass filter right here, just taking out anything on the top of the kick and the bass. And what that does is when I get to this section of the track and the groove is all the way down at the bottom, that opens up the space completely for me to throw in a big hook. And for me, this part of the vocal, this Nate Dogg bridge, was the reason I wanted to make the track. This was the original vision I had for the track. This moment right here, I heard Nate Dogg's vocal, and I was like, dude, that would sound so good over just an empty strip, or just a filtered strip. And so this is basically what the kick and the bass and the vocal sound like. This was the original inspiration for the track.
Like my gangster wall, gangster wall. Is it cause they like my gangster talk? Gangster talk. Ooh. Is it cause they like my handsome face? Handsome face.
And then with everything else that's going on in the track, let me just play it.
Like my gangster wall. Gangster wall. Is it cause they like my gangster talk? Gangster talk. Ooh. Is it cause they like my handsome face? Handsome face. Is it cause they like my gangster way? Gangster way.
So the only thing there, just a little bit of texture, a little bit of white noise in the background. Then I also have these pretty big reverb throws. And that's just to fill the little bit of space, create this kind of cavernous space in the background between the vocals there. But this, again, was the whole point of the track, and this is the basement of the track. So we've now stepped down here, and we've stepped down here, but typically, a lot of times you wouldn't bring the low end back in here, but I just felt like if I brought the low end in there, it would add so much weight and support to that Nate Dogg vocal that I just wanted to throw it in, and I think that it really works. I think it's going to create a really cool moment on the dance floor. So what happens is now we are at the lowest point of the track, and it's time to now switch over from down energy to up energy. And so when we switch to up energy, what we want to do is I call this the turning point, is we want to make a commitment. Like we want to signal to the listener, yo, the direction of energy is changing. We are going up. There is no point of return. That's what I mean by commitment, is now we are, the listener in their mind knows, not consciously, that it's about to get epic, right? It's about to get crazy. Let me play that now and show you. You can feel the moment of commitment. You know exactly what it is now that I pointed out to you, what that turning point moment is. And you'll see that it is very much connected to what is going on in the vocal. So let me play that.
Like my handsome face, handsome face. Is it cause they like my gangster way, gangster way? Ooh, whatever it is, they love it and they just won't let me be.
All right, you could feel it. Like Nate Dogg steps up. Like, again, this was originally part of the original vision too. Like, let's put this part of the vocal under a strip, and then we'll step up with the drums and the bass when Nate Dogg steps up in the vocal, because this part is just freaking chill. Like, is it because they like my, right?
Like my gangster wall, gangster wall. Is it cause they like?
But then over here, whatever it is, they love it. So he steps up, in the performance, but it's just more energy. And so that was like, dude, let's get the drums back in there.
They love it and they just won't let me be. Don't rush me, just relax and let me be cream.
All right, but that is just literally bringing back in the drums and high passing the bass. That's it. And now another thing is, let's come back over to the cheat sheet so we'll see where we are. So we have the basement, the lowest right there. We just walked through the turning point. Now we're in the up energy. A lot of the energy of the track is going to be determined by the groove. You could just see that right there. We step down through the high pass, and then we go into that filtered strip, So step down in the high pass, going to the filter strip, massive step up with the kick in the bass. So now the energy's lifted, but now we're going up. We need to signal up. So that step up definitely signals up to the listener, but what we also can do is use the tension building element. So right away, I'm getting a roll in there. So I have a snare roll that comes in with a low pass, and that's this guy right here. So, and so you can feel that come in too. So if I play this, you'll hear the snare roll come in, along with that step up in the drums and the vocal.
Like my gangsta way, ooh. Whatever it is, they love it and they just won't let me be. I handle my biz, don't rush me, just relax and let me be cream. Whenever I call, come running, 212-1213. You know that I ball, stop running, boy, I call my substitute. I've got hoes.
And so that is really it. So what you could think of is this next 16 bars is I'm going to start to build slow, and then I'm going to start to build a little bit faster, a little bit more dramatically. So right here, the only thing that happens is we step up, we let Nate Dogg do its thing, and then we let Nate Dogg do his thing, and then we have that snare roll just barely kind of creeping up underneath. It's there, but it's not doing anything crazy yet. And then so now in the last 8 bars, this is where we kind of bring the build to its maximum point. And so let's hear what's going on here. And so what are we doing here? How are we building tension? It's not the biggest build in the world, right? Like I think of Appetite or London's on Fire, like those are insane builds. This is not like that. We're just building tension, and the way that we're building tension is mostly through these things. We have roll, which is the snare roll. We've got risers definitely in the background, and the biggest thing that we're probably doing is growing the space. I'm growing the space on the vocal just like I did in the first drop. This is just Endless Smile, nothing crazy, just listing it up, slowly bringing it back down to dry as we approach the payoff. But same with the snare roll. On the snare roll, I have a reverb right here. So you could hear this getting big. This is maximum reverb on the snare. And one thing I remember about that is that I wanted a low mid reverb on this. So if I play this, check it out. Again, I wanted that cavernous kind of space because that's going to be the word of the day, apparently. And so if I play that with the vocal right here, you'll hear that the vocals reverb comes from Endless Smile. And Endless Smile is more of a bright reverb. I think it also introduces some noise. But what I'm getting now is I'm getting a space in the background that is fleshed out in the top end from Endless Smile, and a space in the low mids from the reverb on the snare roll. Because a snare roll, if I'm going to trigger reverb on a snare roll, it's going to trigger that body around like 150, 200 hertz, or from the top end. But I'm taking out the top end and only letting that body of the snare trigger the reverb. But check it out. So you've got that bottom space, you've got that kind of top, brighter, airier space. And so that was the grow. That's the main thing right there. But that's it. All that stuff right there is building tension. Another thing that's building tension right here is I'm removing the kick. I call this weighing anchor. Very silly name, but that's what comes into my mind when I think about it, because the kick is the anchor of the track. And if you're on a boat and you're pulling up the anchor, it's, you're weighing the anchor. And so here I'm just removing the kick. That just creates the track to completely suspend. People are not standing. They don't have that point of stability anymore. The track is just floating. They're floating. And so I love that move, because then when you get into the drop and you get the full kick with the low end now, you get that stability anchor coming back. And it just gives that feeling of resolution on just a next level, especially when there was no kick before. And so let's go ahead and then play that. So now that you know what tension, how we're building tension, let's listen to how that pays off. Again, these 8 bars, these 15 seconds, 4 bars before, 4 bars after, let's listen to that. Let's listen to how it pays off and goes into the drop. But before that, I just want to point out one last thing, that we are using a Pipo transition here, which is just, again, cutting everything, letting that payoff vocal hit, and then exploding into the drop. So here's 4 bars before and after. Let's go. And so the whole point is, like, I hope that that is explosive. You know, my intention as a producer is I hope that just freaking explodes. Okay, but let's just finish up with the main break and build here. So do we have the V-taper? Do we have down energy, then up energy? Absolutely, because, you know, again, I wanted to do this in a way that would be very clear in terms of the demonstration of these ideas. And so I'm trying to we clearly have the down energy with the unique element here of just bringing the low end in that second 8 bars, but it's clearly the lowest point. We got that wide open vocal. We're showcasing the vocal when the groove is in the basement. Clear turning point in both the vocals, the drums, the bass, everything comes back in there. Clear energy building with a snare roll, and then the growing the space especially. And so absolutely in this track, we're going from lowest to highest. So here's lowest.
Like my handsome babe.
And then here's highest right at the end.
Area code.
And that's highest. So we're going from lowest to highest. Elevation over break one, absolutely. This is just saying, like, you know, if you're just developing a track in generally, how are the sections more dramatic or elevated or developed from before? And so clearly this guy's only 16 bars. This is 32 bars. The build is 16 bars. We're doing, you know, a little bit more crazier things over here than we did back in the first break. So in a way, subtraction is the elevation here, because I'm trying to get more out here so that this can explode even more in the drop. Absolutely elevating. No payoff extensions. Everything is going to land on time. Payoff extensions would be is if I just kept on going before I dropped it in, but the drop lands on time, and that's going to be the first thing of hook drop 2. All right, so hook drop 2, the namesake of the HD2 formula. This is what it's all about, like we talked about. And so we introduced the groove in the bass drop. We introduced the hooks in break 1. We brought some hooks and grooves together in hook drop 1, although not a pure HD1 equation. But that was just a decision I made for this track, keeping the vocals prominently in the breaks, keeping the drops a little bit more techy, you could say, a little bit more groove-oriented. Not a lot of big vocal hooks. Except for the last drop here, I'm doing something unique. And in hook drop 1, we got them hooked. Then in the main break and build, we kind of broke the groove and the hooks apart. The groove is really just broken down throughout this, and then we just have that huge Nate Dogg vocal kind of playing throughout, and then we have the groove manipulating the energy underneath, and then especially at the end with the typical kind of tension-building elements right there, promising the listener, yo, we're going to give it back to you. You liked this thing over here, you're going to get it over here, but it's going to be an even elevated way. It's going to exceed expectations. We're going to meet your expectations in terms of what's going to be there, but we're going to exceed expectations at the same time. All right, and so that is the task of hook drop 2. So deliver on time, we do. Hooks over groove, absolutely. But let's go ahead and play the hook drop 2 here and see what we're working with. So that is hook drop 2, and what are we trying to do here? Let's check it out. So hook drop 1 equals about hook drop 2, approximately, plus or minus. So how can we, plus or minus means, like, how can we add to hook drop 2 to elevate it over hook drop 1, or potentially even take away from hook drop 1 to de-elevate it from hook drop 2? This is more of like a production question, but this is definitely approximately the case, but there's a really important difference. Yeah, there's a couple things going on here that I want to point out. One is hook drop 1 is we have basically the groove, and then we have the sound design lead. But here in hook drop 2, that entire drop gets compressed from 32 bars into 16 bars in hook drop 2. And so we take the A section, B section here, and we turn it into just basically just the A section here. So the first 8 bars here is going to be groove. I'm sorry. Yeah, basically groove. And then the second 8 bar is going to be the sound design lift, which was the B section over here. Yeah, that's one move I'm making. I'm just compressing the entire first drop into just 16 bars over here. And when you move a section of the first drop earlier into the track in the second drop, so for example, the B section sound design comes in after 16 bars after hook drop 1. Here it comes in after only 8 bars. I call that front loading. You're front loading the energy to the front of the track in the second drop. And it just makes things more exciting. Things are happening at a faster pace. Another thing is like that is something that we're doing in the hooks, right? But what about the groove? It's always the two sides of things. You've got the hooks and you've got the groove. And so an arrangement is the development of the hooks and groove over time. And then, of course, you have the effects down here, but effects really just kind of accent whatever's going on in the hooks and grooves story. But so the main characters there are going to be the hooks and grooves. So that was a hooks move, front loading it, bringing it in early. What about the drums? What are we doing with the drums? Well, I know for sure. Let me just see something really quick. I know I've got to be front loading in some way. So right away, you can see the top 16th right here. This guy's coming in early. So that's front loading on the drums, because here in the first 16 bars, that 16th note wasn't there until it came together with the sound design in the B section. But in hook drop 2, those 16th notes are playing right off the bat. And then here we have another huge lift in this track is going to be this hi-hat right here. This is the only time that it plays is in the first 16 bars of hook drop 2. And that really, for me, creates the absolute height or peak of the track. And you can hear how the entry sense, which I'll show you in a second, almost leads you up to that hat. So if I play this, check this out. Let me play the beginning over here. So that was cool because that's the first time you heard it. But then when we get into HD2, we're elevating. We're going to do the same thing. It's just going to be on a next level. New hi-hat comes in and just really take things to the top. And listen to the difference in energy from the 16th note. So check it out. Exact same hook layout. We've got the delay. We've got the biatch with the delay. We've got the DJ scratches. We've got that P4 is it cause they with the resonator. Everything's exactly the same, but it feels 10 times bigger because of the entry and the drum lifts from the hat and the 16th. But let me just break down what I'm doing differently here in the bass. And so first of all, it doesn't even look like too much of a big difference here in just the bass itself. So if we look at the bass group, I'll just play this back here. All right, there is one thing I'm doing right here is I'm bringing in a second oscillator. I'll show you that, but then listen to this. So that's definitely bigger. And that is just coming from this macro that I made down here, which is bringing in this second oscillator, which is just going to be a wide, this guy right here is the ICANN has kick, and it's just one voice of unison. This one is 16, just like a very bright, abrasive, aggressive saw wave just from the bend plus minus there. It just adds a little bit more buzz. But another thing I'm doing on this macro 8, or at least I thought it was. So I think this is the crazy, this is the automation right here that I'm doing on macro 5. But you can see that this is automating the level of this wavetable right here. And it's also automating down the mix of the filter, so it's letting in all the buzz, all the top end of both of these waveforms. So that's what I'm doing right here, just to elevate this moment over and above what came before. And then it just goes back to normal. But another thing I'm doing is I'm just taking this guy right here, which is just a very simple square wave, I think with 2 voices. 16 voices, okay, cool. And a bandpass filter. And this guy's just going up. Like if you listen to Odd Mob tracks lately, he's been doing this a lot. And so that was kind of the original inspiration for it. But if you listen... And so that's playing alongside the bass to just really take this thing to the next level. So you got the bigger open bass, you've got that kind of band, that increasing bandpass synth, you've got the 16th notes in the drums, you've got the hat lift. All of those things are elevating the same moment that happened before. So I'm still paying things off in the same way, it's just elevated. It's just taking it bigger, making it even bigger. You know, if we break down those 15 seconds right here, the 4 bars before, 4 bars after, that's it. That's what makes it hopefully feel explosive. And then we get into that big-ass hat lift, and then we get into the second 8 bars, and that's where we front load, and we bring in the synth. And so if I play that... But this right here is the absolute maximum of the track. Pretty much everything is in there. We've got all the rides. We've got the huge synth lead on top. We've got the granulator vocal playing. Like every possible lift is playing in this section. This is the peak of the track. One thing I didn't mention before that I want to just quickly mention now is getting these elements to work together was the primary task of the track. So it would be the granulator group, it would be the lead bandpass, and it would be the drums. So let me get the kick in here. And then also the bass. So where's the bass? So these guys together, these three, the bass, the lead bandpass, and then the granulator working together was the key part of making this drop all work. And in trying different bass lines, what I found is, because those other parts are very simple, dun 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 dun, and then also the granulators, da 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 da. But those are two different rhythms. They work together, but what I needed the bass to kind of glue those together. So the bass is like a composite of those two. And so if we look at the lead bandpass, you'll see that here, the bass is playing exactly the same part. Like if you look at these rhythms, it's playing the exact same part as the lead bandpass right here. Little bit of, and then we kind of lift up right there. But then the granulator takes over on the back half because the granulator is playing. Let me see. Yeah, the granulator is then playing a slightly different rhythm over here, and then that's what the bass is doing right here. You can see that these line up. So you have this part right here is following the primary lead, and then I guess this back half right here is following the granulator synth. So the bass kind of glues those two together. It's playing both of the rhythms of those primary elements, and that's kind of how I made them. All three of those things work together. And I point that out because that was just a primary task for getting this right. Let's hop over to the cheat sheet over here. And so let's look. So this is the key. So what we did is HT1 equals HT2. We've just taken HT1 and we've compressed it into 16 bars into HT2. And we also saw how we elevated HT2 over HT1. 1 by front loading the synth in 8 bars early. 2 by just blasting the elevation. 3 by adding the drum lifts with the 16th note and that hi-hat. And so that's right there. But then in HT2, we also have a B section. We have an A section, B section. Now the A section here is going to be slightly different than in description than what came before. So here is A section groove in hook drop 1. Here's B section sound design in hook drop 1. But in HT2, I would describe this as like groove with a sound design lift for A section, right? So if we go back to CLT stories, we're going to have a CLT story for sure, and this is going to be the gran and the lead. So the lift is going to be the granulator and the lead. And then when we get to the B section, what is the B section here? Well, the B section is going to be Ludacris just shouting area codes. Because poor Ludacris didn't have any real part in here. He did say biatch a couple times, so, good for him. but he hasn't had a big part because I was like, dude, Nate Dogg is just so sick in this track. But as a thematic payoff for the whole track, because the track has area codes, and they did this in the original track. This was another kind of idea that I had when I first heard the track, and I was like, I can map this out into a remix. But like, they have that thematic payoff where Ludacris is just shouting area codes at the end of the track. And so I wanted to do that same move. So A section is groove with the sound design lift. B section here is just going to be, Ludacris just shouting area codes. So let me play that real quick.
916-415-704. Shout out to the 206, everybody in the 808. 702-414-317-214 and the 281. 334-205. I see y'all. 318 and 601.
And so that is definitely A section, B section. So A equals groove plus sound design lift. And then B section equals Luda shouting area codes. Cool. And then A-B edit. We definitely have an A-B edit. And of course, that is pretty much the same thing that happened before. Because it's I've got hose, right? And again, all the edits are exactly the same. All the punks are exactly the same. We've got, you can see here and here. You can see here and you can see here. You can see here, all the same in terms of the crashes, the punks right here, all exactly the same. And that was another thing, is again, trying to keep that like structural integrity, you could say, across the track with a lot of different things happening with the hooks on top, a lot of different changes with the granulator synth, the lead synth, and then that structure slightly changing or front loading in hook drop 1. Now with the Ludacris, how am I going to get these hooks and these edits to work? I just had to, and I've found a section, a way of getting all this stuff, hopefully to kind of work together. But the one moment that I had to really work to get this right is this moment right here. Ludacris is still shouting area codes, but I had to slip in that P4 with the "Is it 'cause they?"
808. 702-415.
And so what I did is I had to really engineer this one, but like, if I just kind of solo the kick here. So I had to just kind of blast a little vocal that he had on here.
808. 702.
So these little delays are doing a lot of work. And then also this little reverb. And if I take those out, it just doesn't sound right.
808. 702.
Actually, that's not that bad. That actually sounds pretty good. But I think that these little delays in the reverb make it stand out a little bit more. Let's see.
808. 702.
Yeah, because then that "Is it 'cause they" chops off those reverbs. But I just had to figure it out because, again, like Luda is just shouting area codes even over this moment. And so that P4 didn't work with it.
808. 216-702-415.
So I had to take out one of those area codes to slip in the P4, and then I tried to prime that a little bit more with the kind of delay, and I think it worked. I think it worked.
Shout out to the 206, everybody in the 808. 702-414-317.
All right, but then of course the that transition going into here, and then of course the exact same lift structure as what happened before. So we're going to get that kind of mid-range ride right here, and then we're going to get the granulator synth right there. And so if we play that, you'll hear those two sounds come in just like before. Again, that's a structural lift, what I call a structural lift, because it's just a lift in the exact same structure throughout the entire track, even though a lot of the hooks are different on top, that underlying structure is the same. And so if I play that here.
214 and 281. 334-205. I see y'all. 318 and 601. 850-708.
And then also this mid ride right here is what I meant. Yep. And so
214 and 281. 334-205. I see y'all. 318 and 601. 203, 804, 402. 301, 904, 407. 850, 708, 502. Holes in different area codes. Know that.
and then here is just, I lucked out because Ludacris just did not say anything right here. And that allowed me to just easily slip in that little P4, is it because they, with the resonator. But clearly, so here we have the B section. It's just Ludacris shouting area codes, and then we get the lift on the back end, so CLT stories. We got the ride lift in the drums, and then we've got the granulator vocal lift in the hooks. Again, because it's all just hooks over groove. What's the story of the hooks and the groove? All right, so we got the B section CLT. That's what we just looked at with the lift. Not big transitions in this track. There's not like this sound that transitions, although I do have this guy. This guy is a transition throughout every single section. He's just very tucked in, this guy right here. And so that is absolutely a transition element. It's just not a prominent one. It's just kind of more of this textural thing. But you can see exactly where this happens. It happens in the second 8 bars before the next section. So it's a transition into the next section. This is a transition into the next section. This is a transition into the B section. This is a transition into the outro. And so I'm getting those the full CLT stories in there, but that transition is not very prominent. It's just kind of more of a textural background thing that you feel. But there is absolutely prominent lifts right there. Micro production, Punk's at his ear candy, absolutely. That's throughout. Just describing how I'm trying to just keep that structure the same. Elevation over HG1, absolutely. We looked at that a lot with the, so many things, right? With the entry, with the drum lifts, with the B section now being completely different with Ludacris, again, just shouting. Front loading is an elevation over HG1 right here, bringing that synth in early. It's only playing for eight bars just to kind of give him that hit and then move into the Ludacris vocal, which kind of steps down to the outro. But entry, absolutely. Right there, a little bit of tactical stuff. I don't know if I'd call this a false start, but one thing I want to draw your attention to is this little cut right here. I just love that kick cut. The kick goes away. Can't even really hear it, but you can feel it. That kick goes away so that when biatch hits, like you get that kick now underneath it, and it just, to me, just feels huge. But I really liked that. And so I wanted, again, to use this structure where I moved that kick right here in different places of the track. And it just so happened that it made sense in the B section with the Ludacris vocal. Because watch this. When Ludacris plays right here, is singing right here, there's just this natural place to accent that moment. And so I removed the kick, and check it out. 916-415-704. Shout out to the 206. So when he says 4, like that was just lucky. And so I got to accent that moment, but what I also did is I threw a clap bomb underneath it right here, this guy. Again, that was just lucky, but I really liked that. But so 916-415-704. Shout out to the 206. Everybody in the 808. And typically when I make a track, I work on the main drop first. So I was trying to bring that back over here in the first drop. Just removing a kick right there. But then I wasn't able to get that kick removed over here. It just didn't sound right, but I was able to get that clap bomb. So even here on these little kind of tactical things, I got the beginning drop and the second drop to kind of have that same moment, obviously elevated in hook drop too. But even within the in the B sections here, I got to cut the kick over here, so that means it's a little bit more dramatic because it's perfect underneath that Ludacris vocal. But here, I was able to make the clap bomb fit in, but I just didn't like the kick cut, so I just had the kick play in full. But then we do have that nice clap bomb. You can check it out. Watch. So again, just trying to preserve as much of the structure as possible as things change a lot on top. So coming back over here, basically checking off all the boxes in hook drop 2 here. And then if we go into the outro, I just try to keep it as simple as possible. The first 16 bars are just groove, a little bit of punks, not dramatic punks. So I'm just keeping, for example, the little snare things. And then some kind of effects that this was made using Tantra. I think that was from the original synth. I just put Tantra on the synth, but that sounded so cool, and I just have a bunch of delay on that. That's it. And that just sounded so cool as a transition out into the outro, so if I play that. Different area code, know that. And so it's just groove, and then and then there's this one little flute sound that I just got from Splice that I thought was sick. Just super hip-hop, but it fit the vibe, even though it doesn't play anywhere else in the track. I just wanted to throw it in. And so that kind of plays right here at the 4. And then it's just more, and then it's just I've got. So kind of going back to the intro with the T's, stepping down the groove. And then breaking down to beats with the full kick, and then breaking down to just the high pass beats over here. And then I just have this super long delay on the vocal here.
I've got hoes.
Just has some weird texture, and just to piss producers off if they want to sample it. But at the same time, I'm just joking, because you can download the samples for free. But that basically covers everything. Now let's go over here so we get rid of that delay. There we go. So there we go. Groove down to beats. And that's it. That's all we really need to check off there. But yeah, this whole thing was just to kind of show you HG2 formula. Just wanted to make a track. I'm very excited about this track because I haven't released in a while, just helping behind the scenes, I guess. And but I was so inspired by everyone crushing it that I was like, dude, let's make some music again, get some things out there, or at least make some of my own music. So yeah, that was really cool. But yeah, again, this is just an example of using the HG2 formula, realizing that this is not, I say formula, but this is not rigid rules. This is a flexible framework. And hopefully that was what this breakdown showed you, is you could use this to create something that pays off in a way that works for the listener, that works for the dance floor, but you could still be super unique about it, because nothing about this is like a rule. It's nothing like tactical. This is all super abstract and high level, and you can execute it in your own way. And that's what this is all about. So that's it. If you got any questions or want to offer any commentary of your own, leave them down in the comment section below. Don't forget, you could download the song and the samples from this track for free. Also, you'll see a link down below to the Ableton template. And if you want to watch me build this track from scratch and learn about the system behind it, then check out the ZERMELO System link in the description as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next breakdown. Peace.